Story 1. Mine's from 2017, and I am not giving it up. Too many accounts are tied to it at this point. It is basically part of my identity. Story 2. Had my main phone number for 13 years. Story 3. It has evolved. It used to be old enough to buy a beer where I live. Then it was old enough to buy a beer in the United States. Now it is old enough to have a master's degree. Not so fun fact. My childhood phone was a rotary phone, and my number was still 5 digits. Story 4. My sister's cell phone number is the same number we had growing up with a landline, since the invention of cell phones. Story 5. I do not know, but it has been the same number since cell phones first became commonly available and affordable, that is, since before smartphones. Story 6. My mom got their old landline number transferred to a cell phone, the same number they have had since the 1980s. Story 7. A better question is if your area code is the one where you live now. In my case, no. I am not sure why my children and husband have area code 202, and I have area code 301. I suppose I got mine first. Story 8. Mine is only 12 years old. My wife's is 19. My buddy's is 27. But the winner is my mother. She has her original number from 1988. That's 37 years. Dad worked for the telephone company, so she had a phone pretty early. Story 9. I do not get spam calls, but I have been living in my house for 25 years now and I still get junk mail for the same person. Story 10. It's funny because the regional indicator of my phone number, the first 3 digits, haven't been in circulation unless you're a company or already have a number with them for a good 10 years, as they ran out of numbers. The phone number has 10 digits, with 7 following the 3 regional digits. I moved abroad, thousands of kilometers away, and parked my number on a voice-over internet protocol service. I still have the same number 19 years later. The first 3 digits mark me as an original from the city of Montreal. A real 514 kind of guy. The last 4 digits are the same for my siblings and my parents. Story 11. 24 years custom number. The best number ever. However, for many reasons you may know, I am unable to share it. Story 12. Since 2003, carriers have not been able to deny you the ability to keep your number when you switch providers. I have had the same number since before then. Story 13. 29 years ago, one day in 1996 at the mall, I was offered a giant Tandy brick phone for just 1 cent with a 12-month contract. I said sure, why not, and several different carriers later I still have the same phone number. Story 14, only about 3 years old. However, I have had the same cell phone provider since the early 2000s. I just change my number every few years to start fresh. Story 15. Mine is from 1993 when Vodafone, for whom I worked, launched their digital service. My wife's number from the same time had the same last 6 digits as our landline number, as we were allowed to choose our numbers. Story 16. I don't even know. All I know is I had it for almost 10 years, and I still get people trying to reach the person who had it before sometimes. Story 17. About 21 years. Wow, I hadn't thought about that before. I still remember nagging my mom to get one and my dad taking me to the AT&T store. Story 18. At least 14 years. It was our home phone number through cable back in the day. But when we canceled the service, I did not want to change my number on everything. I paid a fee to have it transferred. Story 19, it would be 22. But when I switched phone carriers, number portability was a new feature, and customer service made it sound like a huge hassle. People were still used to phone numbers changing, so I changed mine as well. I still receive calls for someone who has been in jail for 20 years. Story 20. About 6 months ago, I had to replace my number because I had problems with my service provider at that time, so I got a new number. However, I had my old number for more than 10 years. Story 21. 12 years. When my wife and I moved, I changed my phone number. Only 9 people currently have it. Work and others use a secondary Google Voice number. Story 22. Going on 10 years, I think. I am 26 and I have had it since junior year in high school. I graduated in 2017. Story 23. 25 years next month. I got it and my large brick-shaped phone in my college town so I could look for jobs and apartments when I was moving to the big city. Story 24, 2011. Same age as the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I got it when the iPhone 4S came out. Before that, I had little LG keyboard phones and trackphone devices. Since then, I have been Team iPhone and have kept the same number and provider. Story 25. A year old, almost exactly. I was doxxed and swatted last year by my neighbor's teenage son. My old number was 16 years old. Story 26. I switched phones a lot in the early 2000s. Then a new phone company opened, and I got an amazing phone number for a low price on the day they opened. I still have it about 15 years later and am never letting it go. Story 27. My first phone line used to be my home phone number when I was a child. Later, we transferred it to a mobile phone. Then, I had another primary phone line for 20 years. Story 28. 5 years ago, I tried to transfer my old phone number, but it did not work. Probably because the phone was a hand-me-down under my parents' names. Story 29. A bit over 3 years because I was on my mother's family plan when she died. And getting a new number was the easiest way with the least paperwork to still have a phone. I think my father has had the same number since the early 2000s. Story 30. Since 2004, I believe after I graduated high school. I remember paying about $150 with the deposit for a Sprint flip phone with no cameras yet. My second cell phone did have a camera. I remember the 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. minutes, but I couldn't even afford the extra $10 a month to talk earlier. Call me after 9 p.m. Story 31. 12 years ago and 2 years ago, it somehow got connected to somebody named Jessica for a wide variety of things. Story 32. I think I got it in 2009. I don't get calls for the number specifically for old owners, but my friend from middle school's older brother has a number 1 digit off from mine, and we still get calls for each other by mistake. Story 33. Mine is not that old, but my oldest friend has had hers since high school, 1996. I cannot remember exactly, but she might have had it even before we met. So it is at least 29 years old. Story 34. Number since 1995. We had it transferred to a mobile phone a year ago. Before that, it was our landline. Story 35. About 15 years now. I got it in high school, and it has survived 3 different carriers and probably 10 phones. Story 36. 27 years ago, you could choose your own phone number, such as, which 10 numbers do you wish? I chose to use the same number as my landline, with a different prefix. The landline is no longer in use, but the mobile phone number is still active. Story 37. 1996. Yes, the dialing code changed from 03 to 077 when the United Kingdom mobile companies moved all the numbers, but I have held it throughout. All but 2 years were also with the same provider. Story 38. 5 years, and this is the longest I have had my number because this is the longest I have been stable in life with all my bills. Story 39. My original phone number started when I was in high school around 2009. Then I moved abroad in 2017, so the number was disconnected, and I have the number I have now. Story 40. 27 years old. Started at American Telephone and Telegraph, then Singular Wireless, then American Telephone and Telegraph again, followed by T-Mobile, and now back to American Telephone and Telegraph. Also survived moving to 2 states. Story 41. My mom was a real estate agent in Vancouver when I was a preteen, maybe in the early 1990s. She got a cell phone number with a now prestigious area code, a cell phone only 889 prefix, and my birth year. I inherited the number when she retired. I was in my early 20s returning from college. I even managed to change the name to mine. Story 42. 1 year later this month, I moved to a new country and got a new phone number. The previous number I had for about 20 years. Story 43. Until I retired, my work number was 23 years old. My directory contained many people I could not remember and some who had died. Story 44. Since 1992, I had a poor car in college and a rural drive back and forth that probably did not have cell service back then anyway. I still felt better with my $17 per month Bell South mobility phone. There was no minutes plan back then, of course. I also remember the Mitsubishi phone that came with it had two antennas. You screwed on one that was about 3 inches tall for city use, and then you could change it to an 8-inch antenna for the country. Story 45. I've only had this one for about 5 to 6 years, but I have been receiving calls for a Dolores for a very long time. All medical. I hope she is okay. Story 46. 15 years. I have one of the rare area codes that is barely available anymore because they ran out of numbers. The city mostly uses a different code for newer numbers. Story 47. I believe my father got it in 1992 or thereabouts. Since it was for our business, he passed it on to me. The strange part is a friend of my mother has the next number. Her number is 1 digit higher than mine. We are trying to see if we can get that number one day when she no longer needs it, but we do not know how. 33 years, by the way. Story 48. I have had my number for 22 years, but it was my father's number before that. He left the phone with me and my sibling when he went on active duty after September 11th. Story 49. My son was born in 1987. I remember I had a pager and a cellular phone. First, people would page you, then you would turn on your big bulky cellular phone that had a battery life of about 15 minutes and call them back. Good times. After cellular phones improved and no longer required a pager, I swear I would feel that buzz on my stomach when it wasn't there. Story 50. Mine is about 12 years old. My brother is about 60. He bought our parents' house. He has moved from there but stays in the same town, so he kept the number. Story 51. 3 years ago. I moved about halfway across the world from where I was born. Keeping my old phone number was not an option. Story 52. My first job out of college was in 1999. It was for a cellular company that also provided dial-up internet. I received a company phone. I have kept the same number even after they were bought out by AT&T. Story 53. I got my current phone number in July 2000, so it is a little over 25 years old now. I have never switched providers and I am still with the original one. Story 54. Ha, good question. I was 15 years old when I got it and I am still using it. I found out that you can save your phone number even if you change the mobile service provider. I was very happy to hear about it because this number became like a brother to me. Story 55. I am a little over 20 years old at this point. This was my first phone number, and I plan on keeping it. I had a bitter ex who went around putting my phone number on every calling list, but I wrote it out and still kept the number. She seems to have finally gotten over it years later. Story 56. About 23 years. It used to be a big deal to keep your phone number, so if you lost your phone, you could stay in touch. Now we have WhatsApp, Messenger, and Telegram. Story 57. It was my father's in the 1990s, and he gave it to me in 2002. He had a middle schooler handling his business and spam calls for months until all his real contacts had his new number. I occasionally still get a spam call for him. Being a woman, I just pretend I have never heard of a man by that name. Story 58. I have had my mobile phone number for so long that when I received it, I was given the option to choose from a list of prefixes and the last 4 digits of the phone number. I believe it is possible that I am the only person who has ever had this number. Story 59. 6 months. I receive so many scam calls that every few years I change my phone number. I have 2 numbers. One is 6 months old, and the other is a 15-year-old AT&T number. Story 60. Our landline was converted about 54 years ago. We keep it for sentimental reasons but still receive a call occasionally. Story 61. Mine is about 20 years old, and I was told by a Generation X millennial chemist worker that I had a cool number. It has many zeros. It is actually pretty cool. Story 62. Old enough that it was on a bag phone from United States Cellular. 25 to 30, I suppose. That phone was purchased at Radio Shack in the mall. I honestly cannot pinpoint any closer. The mall has not been a mall for many years. Of course, Radio Shack is long gone around here. Story 63. Not exactly sure, but it was probably 1991 or 1992, as I remember my supplier, Hutchinson, being bought by Orange. I had been with them for at least a couple of years at that point, so 33 or 34 years. Still the same number, which has a nice pattern to it as well. Edit. It must have been 1992, as my first phone was a Mitsubishi MT7. So, 33 years. Story 64. I am 21 years old. I had another phone number for 6 years with a different service provider, but back then, in this country, you could not transfer your phone number to another provider. I transferred this number once when I got my first iPhone 15 years ago. Story 65. Brand new. I was asked to report to the city-level police department to have it unlocked because they flagged it for potential risk of telecommunication scam. However, the police department was not willing to unlock it for me, as they could not prove I was not involved in the telecommunication scam. They wanted me to submit my social insurance details, my bank transaction details for the entire previous year, and a number of other documents. I got fed up after visiting them a few times, so I just got a new number. I was not keeping in touch with anyone in the first place anyway. Story 66. 22 years. I have had it since I arrived here for university and never changed it. I have switched carriers a couple of times, but I can port my number with it, which is really cool because I have one of the original area codes and get to keep it that way. So, I never have the new phone. Who is this? Moment. Story 67. 2 years ago, I dropped my phone on the ice of a lake and needed a new one. It is easier to get a new number than to transfer the old number. Also, I had difficulty pronouncing my old number. For some reason, the combination of numbers made my voice crack. I always felt embarrassed when giving my number. A positive side effect is that I went through the 2024 election cycle without a single telemarketing call or text. That seems unheard of in today's climate. Story 68. I would say it is nearly 4 years old, but I am not sure. This is only my second phone number, and I am only a teenager. Story 69. This one is new, only about 15 characters. My old phone number was bombarded by spam around the clock and it became unbearable. The number used to belong to a drug dealer because I would constantly receive calls from strangers looking for connections. They eventually stopped, and now I have a great phone number where, out of 10 digits, there is one set of 3 identical numbers and one set of 4 identical numbers. Only 3 digits are unique. Story 70. When I was about 20, my parents used my phone number as an emergency contact for me and my siblings when we were kids. When we all got our own phones, I was the one who got to keep this number. Story 71. Since February 4th, 2000, the day before I was recruited to the army. Now it is 7 figures instead of 6, but still the same. Story 72. Well over a decade, I am pretty sure, if not longer. Even now, I still get spam calls and messages asking for the person who used to have it. Very annoying. Story 73. I have 2. One is from 30 years ago, and the other is just under 24 years. The second is one of 4 sequential numbers I gave the family just after September 11th. Story 74. 20 years. The same number I have had since I first got one at 12. My parents would be at work when my sister and I got out of school, so they thought it would be best to get me a phone. Story 75. Old enough that I found advertising for a local business it used to belong to, even before 10-digit dialing. Call RE2XXXX. Story 76. 10 years old now, my second phone number after my first, which lasted 5 years before I moved cross-country and changed to a local number. Story 77. Over 30 years old. I started working as a physician in 1990 and took call, so getting a cell phone in the early 1990s was a great way to respond to pages when I was out but on call. Story 78. 35 years old. Cellular One, predecessor to Verizon. Had a bag phone, then StarTAC, then Blackberries. StarTAC was next level. Story 79. I have had this number for about 9 years now. At first, I received calls for an apparently deceased elderly man. The calls slowed down over time, but every now and then someone still calls asking for that name. I am not sure how to feel about it. They recycled the number and assigned it to me at that time. Story 80. More than 23 years with the same phone number and the same carrier. I got it with the original Nokia bar phone about a month after my daughter was born. Story 81. I live in a world where, when I give out my phone number, People recognize it and say, "Oh, you lived there in 2002. I feel like our area codes roughly correspond to where we lived around that time frame. This does not apply to younger people who were not around yet. I have had the same phone number since 2000. Story 82. I have had it since 2004 when I turned 7 and got my first phone. We did not have a landline, and my mother wanted to reach me during the day, so I ended up being one of the very few kids in my class to have my own phone. Story 83. I got the phone number when I moved to the United States at 9 years old. The previous owner kept the number very private. Only business people called. Over time, I informed them that the number no longer belonged to the previous owner. Nowadays, I receive almost no incoming calls, not even spam. My old Canadian number I had for 14 years, but I disconnected it. Story 84. 3 years old. I tried to transfer my old one but made a mistake because I did not see the release code, and it got lost between AT&T and T-Mobile. Story 85. For 20 years, the problem has been that the first 3 digits and the second 3 digits are 2 area codes right next to each other. I receive many random calls from people trying to reach someone else. Yesterday, I got a call from the office I go to for therapy, but it was someone else's very personal information. I had to call them back to let them know they made a mistake. It is very annoying. Story 86. 23 years. Back when it was singular before AT&T bought them. I just switched to T-Mobile 2 months ago. This is the first time I have left a cell carrier. I should have switched a long time ago. Story 87. So old when I call telephone mobile, the person on the other line always says, "Wow, this account is older than me." Story 88. Changed 2 years ago. Apparently, the previous owner had some sort of hotel and a lot of debts. I think I was called 20 times for money and received another 30 messages. Story 89. Had a different number in the beginning. Does anyone remember Nextel? I had to switch to that for a job since my family also used it, so it was not a big deal. However, when I switched back to a regular phone, I lost my original number from the mid-1990s. This one is about 23 years old. Story 90. I have kept my original mobile phone number for almost 20 years and have lost count of the number of phones it has been used on. Story 91. At least 25 years. I do not even remember how long it has been, but I do remember that back then you could choose your own number. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.